Welcome to the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity Podcast. Join Stewart, Heath for down-to-earth conversations with top professionals, entrepreneurs, and leaders who have a story to tell. Let's get rolling.
Hello, everyone. This is Stewart, Heath, founder and CEO of Harvard Grace Capital. I am your host for today's episode of the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity Podcast. We're very fortunate to have as a guest today Brandon Styll, if I got that right. And he's got an incredible entrepreneurial journey that he's going to share with us today, and I'm excited. We've just chatted for a few minutes here before the show, and I already love his energy, and you're going to love his resume as he shares his learnings from us. So, Brandon, thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure to be here, Stewart. Thank you for inviting me onto your show.
My pleasure. My pleasure. If you've watched any of the episodes, we generally do the same 5 questions. So here comes the first one. When you think back over your career, and if you've looked at our stuff, I only interview people of a certain age, like us. So
you trying to say I'm old?
Not at all. No, I'd just say you're a contemporary. So
contemporary. I like
it. So when you think back over your career, are there moments that you would say was a game changer that changed how you thought your career would go, but put you on the road to where you are today?
Absolutely. October 30th, 2019. So not that long ago, a little more than 5 years ago. I was a real go-getter. My dad was an entrepreneur, owned businesses his entire life, and grew up watching him. And I didn't shy away from hard work, hustled, left college to pursue my career in the restaurant industry, because I felt like there's just so much more you can learn, actually boots on the ground doing the job, and was incredibly successful as far as, I was hired as I've had a title of manager or something in my title since I was 22 years old. I've been leading people since I was 22 years old. But it wasn't until I was 40 years old that everything changed. That was the time for me that life changed. Been married almost 20 years now. And on October the 30th, 2019, I got fired from my job. I had just bought my dream house. And 15 days later, I lost my job. And that was the day that I learned the most important thing that I've ever learned. That's the day that I also quit drinking. It's the first day that I accepted that I drank too much. Yeah. And I lost my job because of my drinking. Just something stupid I did at a party. I'm not going to details, but I made a mistake. And the gentleman who owned the business had to let me go. And it was in that moment that I realized a lot of things. I went to some meetings, and I got my stuff together, so to speak, and I learned to give everything up to God, and I stopped trying to control every single thing and every single thing that I do. I learned the serenity prayer, and that to me was probably the most important thing that I've ever done as far as business-wise, life-wise, everything. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And you say that in these meetings. We go to meetings and you say this, you recite that prayer. But if you stop and you think about it and you say, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, so much anxiety and so much stress and so much strife is all wrapped around so much stuff we can't control. And we expend so much energy obsessing, freaking out, anger, resentment, all of these things around stuff that we have no control over. So identifying and prioritizing the things that you can control and really getting in there and doing the best job you possibly can for the things that are within your control has changed my life in so many ways, and has brought me a level of peace that I didn't know existed.
That's fascinating. That's great. Was it just easy to give up control, Brandon?
No. That's one of the hardest things you do. I think that I was up against a wall. I learned a lot about myself as a leader, as a person, when I realized how much control drove me, how much I needed that sense of control. meditation is something that I've found. I wasn't like a morning drinker. I wasn't a person that would do, highballs at lunchtime. That was never my thing. My thing was, I didn't like to feel emotions. And so drinking was when I couldn't control things, when things got frustrating or hard, that was my solution to numb my frustration. So a lot of meditation, a lot of counseling, a lot of really great people around me that I trusted. And then giving trust to people and understanding that people are going to make mistakes and do the things. Having good people around me that I really could trust has been a game changer for me. But no, it's not an easy thing. It was easy in the moment for me because I didn't have a choice. I lost all control that day when I lost my job. I lost all control. I didn't have control over anything anymore. I had prayer. It was really all that I had.
Right.
And I'm not a Bible thumper telling you that, this isn't a religious thing. This is whatever your higher power is, the term they use. But I'm a Christian, and that's what I do.
Well, grace is not up here by accident. So we love entrepreneurs, and we love entrepreneurs who are Jesus followers. So, and that's one of the, it's not exclusively, but we like to highlight those kind of entrepreneurs too, who are, most of us entrepreneurs, we have ADD, if not full blown mental illness, but most of us are called to this. To your point, almost none of us had a choice. We had to be entrepreneurs, either in your circumstance, or we were just compelled to do it from a young age. So, so my next question is about a bump in the road along your entrepreneur. That's probably
I knocked out questions 1 and 2 with question 1, didn't I?
Yeah, but. So you lost your job. What happened after that?
It's an interesting story. I made a lot of changes in my life, and I took the rest of the year off, and I spent time with my family, and I reconnected with what was important to me. And I spent that time with my children. In restaurants, we don't really get the holidays off. So losing your job the day before Halloween, I had the rest of the year, and I enjoyed Thanksgiving with my family, and I enjoyed Christmas. And then I interviewed for some other jobs. I prayed before I went in there. Some of them didn't work out. And it's amazing the power of trusting in things you can't control going into it, not being angry that something didn't work. Everything happens for a reason, I believe. I started a company called New Light Hospitality Solutions in February of 2020. And it's going to be a consulting company where I go around and help restaurants and help them operationally, because that's what I'm best at. And then signed up 4 restaurants. The 2 restaurants I was working with that I got fired from were my first 2 clients. It wasn't a situation where they wanted to fire me. We were doing some really amazing things. I'm going to give you an example. October 31st, we had to sign a lease on a new restaurant, right? This was the day we had been 3 months in advance researching, spending money, attorneys, interior designers. We were signing the LOI on October 31st. The lease is, we're going to do it. October 30th, I lose my job. And I said, are you still going to do the other restaurant? And he said, no, I'm not doing it without you. I have to have you to be able to do it. And I felt terrible. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm just terrible, terrible, terrible. But then you think everything happens for a reason. We were looking to open that new restaurant mid-March 2020. What happened in mid-March 2020?
COVID.
Everything had to shut down. If we would have opened that restaurant mid-March 2020, we've had to leverage the other 2 restaurants and potentially lost all 3. Yeah. So you never know in the moment when bad things. I look back on that day and some say, it's a terrible day. I look at that day as the best day of my life, the best day of my life. And these things that you seem are bad in the moment, you just have to trust that they're there for a reason. There's a lesson involved for them. But I started this company, and then COVID happened. And then who's hiring restaurant consultants when you have to close your restaurant? Nobody. And one of the things I've been praying about was a podcast. And I really wanted, I had been a director of operations for this restaurant group, and I'd been a district manager for U.S. Foods for years. I've been in over 1,000 restaurants in 3 states in the last 15 years. I was the produce guy in Nashville. And one thing I know is that people don't talk to each other. Restaurateurs or independent restaurateurs are in their kitchen. They're in their restaurants all day long. And I'd go from restaurant to restaurant to restaurant, and nobody would say, man, that's a great best practice. You should share that. How would I do that? And so I kept having all of these visions of doing a podcast, and the name Nashville Restaurant Radio just came to me, and I said, I got to do a podcast. So March 13th, 2020 was my first episode, and I started off and I said, what can I share with the community? How are we all going to communicate through this? So I started Nashville Restaurant Radio, started New Line Hospitality, Nashville Restaurant Radio, continued to service my clients. I went on Facebook that night and I said, hey, I started a podcast. Who wants to talk about what they're going through? And the floodgates opened. I think I put out from March to December 31st, like 200 episodes or 150 episodes. I mean, every night I'm just at my house putting together these shows. And to date, we're almost 5 years in. Or March will be 5 years. I've done 420 episodes. I've talked to every chef in the city, essentially. I've talked to the mayor. I've had Senate candidates. I've had celebrities. I've had musicians. I've had all these amazing people just sharing their stories, just talking about, what their experience is. And now where restaurateurs weren't really talking to each other, now there's a whole playlist. You can go back and listen to 400 episodes of what people were experiencing through a pandemic. And the things I've learned have been numerous. And the start of 2021, I've been working with the 2 restaurants that I lost my job at. And they said, you know what, man, you would come back. What are we doing here? And so they rehired me in the position that I was in previously. And I've still been doing that. Now we have a 3rd restaurant and we're crushing it. So full circle, I'm doing the job I got fired from today in the same company. But I think when you look back and you go, man, that guy made a 180 from who he was that day to who he is today. And it's helped me be a better leader, a better friend, a better mentor, and a better husband and father.
That's fascinating. And just in so many ways, God's perfect timing. He knew there was a pandemic coming. Nobody else did. But have you expanded beyond Nashville restaurants at this point?
As far as I'm interviewing people?
Yeah.
Like for the podcast?
Yeah.
I have started Atlanta Restaurant Radio. I have another podcast, Atlanta Restaurant Radio. I've only done half dozen episodes. I kind of started late summer, and then we go into the wintertime, and this is when the restaurants are busiest. And the podcast slows down a lot in the holiday season as I've got a ton of other stuff. But here we are in the new year. It's time to ramp it back up, and I'm starting a new company. Another company. I'm kind of transitioning New Light Hospitality Solutions to the Nashville Area Restaurant Alliance. Okay. So one of the things that, like we chatted before the show started here, one of the things that we do is we before the show and after the show, mine are hour-long uncensored conversations. So at the end of the show, hey man, what's going on with this? Or there's something that we talk about, and the position I have of director of operations is a very luxury position for local restaurants. Local restaurants, it's a chef, it's an owner, and then we all just kind of make it happen. Local restaurants are struggling everywhere right now. And I'm kind of a luxury position because I get to negotiate deals with vendors, and I have a lot of relationships with vendors. I've been in those roles. So Nashville Area Restaurant Alliance is bringing restaurants together, and I am negotiating individual deals with local vendors to help local restaurants. So I'm hopefully finding a win-win-win, helping vendors find new clients, local vendors I'm trying to partner with, and then restaurants helping them save money because I can now use volume of multiples, similar to a GPO, but it's a super small, hyper local. My vision is to really help to stop restaurants from closing. Chefs aren't negotiators. Restaurateurs are out there they're hustling to try and save every penny they can. And every company out there feels like is trying to take every penny that they can. And I know where those things happen, and I can help people. So that's
what's the hardest thing for an independent restaurant owner what's the hardest thing in their business?
I would say staffing. For me, what I see the most of is culture, staffing and culture. I mean, the most volatile thing you have is everybody going to show up today?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a great nonprofit that I partner with. It's called the Giving Kitchen, and the Giving Kitchen helps restaurant workers in any kind of crisis, and they're absolutely amazing. They're based out of Atlanta, Georgia, and they're great friends of mine. I'm on the engagement council here in Nashville. And there's so much alcoholism. There's so much drug abuse. There's so much mental health issues. Getting a job in a restaurant's relatively easy. I can go be a server anywhere. You get in there, you just have to hustle. But working in restaurants is trauma. And you got to think, you walk in, it's 4:00, you get to work at 4:00, and it's slow. There's nobody in there. Then all of a sudden the floodgates open, and you go from, I'm just setting up my tables, to hair on fire. I have 5 tables. I'm running around. Chef's yelling at me because I rang in the wrong thing. It's chaos. And then it slows down and dies again. And nobody sits down with those people after the shift and says, hey, are you okay? That was really chaotic. And that was crazy what we just experienced. And now we're just going to send you off in the ether with a stack of cash.
Yeah.
Well, how do you deal? You go to a bar, you go smoke a joint, you do what you have to do. And there's a lot of that. And that creates a lot of uncertainty in what people are going to be doing the next day. And so I'm a big proponent of helping culturally what you're doing and being intentional with it. Are you offering good mental health services at your restaurant? We offer an app called First Stop Health that helps people. We have the mental health option. You can do all of these things in our restaurants. We want to have the best benefits package you can possibly have. We really hustle towards it. I think that the staffing side and culturally can be so toxic in so many restaurants if you're a restaurant owner, keeping all of those personalities from front of the house to back of the house, rowing in the same direction, as Jim Collins would say, and Good to Great, right? Getting the right people, on the right seats on the bus and rowing in the right direction.
Right seat. Mm-hmm.
That's what we got to do. And that's the hardest thing, because the turnover rate's 200%.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I'll say since COVID, and most of us in the South, we kind of pretended like there was no pandemic from about June 2020 on, but still there was a lot of strangeness, and it completely changed my attitude towards the workers that did show up in restaurants. And I'm a bean counter. I can be a tightwad, and I would do horrible things years ago, like leave a $1 tip or something like that. But I'm making up for it now, because now I'm just appreciative that people are there. I mean, every business in the world has a staffing shortage, and I'm doing minimum 20% tips, and sometimes a lot more, depending on, I'm trying to read how the server is doing, because you use the word trauma. It sounds a little bit like warfare without the bullets. It's so. That is interesting in a business environment.
I will go one step further. I interviewed, my second interview I ever did was with a woman named Margot McCormick, and she owns Margot Cafe in East Nashville. And she said, I'm most scared about this. This was on March 17th we met. I think the close down was like March 19th there. We had to mandatorily close. She goes, I'm most scared because so many people in the service industry, the way we show love and the way that we give love is by serving acts of service. So when that's how you're able to give love, she goes, I create food. I create a menu, and then people come into my restaurant and I create this food. That's how I show love, and I put it out there. And when people consume it and I can see them eating it and I see the smiles on their faces, that's what gives me joy. So many of these people who've chosen this as a profession, it's not just a means to an end. It's who they are. This is our personality. We have a spirit of service in us that brings us joy. And when we can't do that, the big fear was, what are we going to do when we can't go do that? Yeah, we'll get stipends. It's like, money's fine, but mental health wise, mentally, this is my community. This is everything to me. So if you're just your server, you leave them $1, not only is that a slap in the face for what they're doing, but it also tells them you didn't do a good job, that my love that I gave you wasn't received. Whatever. I'm not enjoying it. So many people, it's not about the tip. It's about your experience? And
Right.
do you understand what I'm able to provide for you? Because that's how I gain my self-worth. Just to go really deep into it. And when you leave a dollar tip, you're saying they get that as my self-worth is nothing. And that hurts. That's a painful thing for a server, not just monetarily, but mentally.
Well, that was a long time ago, and when I wasn't as great of a guy as I am now. But
I'm more speaking to people who are listening that might be
I hear
somebody
you.
who would do something like that.
No, but yeah, it was just such a paradigm shift for the entire country to I'm going in, getting a meal is a transaction. I'm not really paying attention to the people bringing it, unless my tea glass is empty again. But so the shift is now, hey, thank you for coming to work today, so that I can have a relaxing meal. It's still that way. It's called the hospitality industry for a reason. So
I'm going to tell you something that I don't think is, we're not going to get to all 5 of your questions. I'm going to tell you something that's the antithesis of something you'd think I would say. I think people were so amazingly generous during the pandemic. It was amazing how people showed up, how they cared, respected. Anybody that brought their to-go food out, they tipped really well.
Yeah.
But I think it got out of control. And I think that people are now expecting tips for existing. I think that you have to provide a service. And I think you need to learn your guest, and you need to ask the right questions. You need to create an amazing experience for them, even if it's bringing your food out to the car. But tipflation, or whatever we want to call this tipping culture that we're in right now, I think is ridiculous. It's
now, when you say people, are you speaking to a particular age group of people?
No, I'm just saying people in general. I think there's a lot of, when are we going to get to a point to where we're tipping at the grocery store?
Right.
I mean, everybody under the sun is asking for a tip these days. And I think that we took the generosity that people had for people who came to work during a pandemic, and now we're just exploiting it. I met with a woman who owned 7 Subways, and I said, how are things going? And she goes, things are going amazing now that we've incorporated tipping. I said, you've incorporated tipping at Subway? Are you delivering the food to the tables now? And she goes, no, we're just paying people. We used to pay people $23 to $25 an hour, and now we pay everybody $11 an hour plus tips, and they're making more money than they've ever have. And I go, oh, so you just decreased the amount of money you're paying people by like 40%, and now you're taxing your guests, and you're not providing any more of a service? That's BS to me. Like, I don't, there's not a service. Well, they're making your sandwich. Your sandwich is $11. I'm paying a fair market price for your sandwich. Why am I now paying for your labor on top of that? I think that's happening over and over again everywhere, and I think it's really obnoxious. And what it does is it hurts the people that provide actual service. And my restaurants are full service restaurants that I operate. And you go in, and we're gonna bring you every single thing. We're gonna clean your table. We're gonna bring you refills. We're gonna help you navigate through the menu. I'm gonna find out what allergies you have. I'm gonna give you an experience, because what I do is amazing. But since you had to tip at Starbucks, and since you had to tip over here and over there and everywhere that you go, you're probably not going to tip as much now, because you're tired of tipping everybody. So it hurts the people that provide an actual service when everybody is now taxing you for purchasing something from them.
I can totally see that. And I think what you're expressing is really what sort of my attitude was before. Although you go to other cities, like northern cities, I feel like it's kind of always been that way. Somebody's always got their hand out. But anyway, the culture will figure it out one way or the other, and as all things do, it'll go too far one way before it snaps back to the other. So, let's shift gears a little bit.
Let's do it.
Staying current. You're obviously a vibrant entrepreneur, lots of ideas. How do you stay current and on top of your industry? And I think I know the answer, but everybody's got, yeah, everybody's got, got stuff that they need to, be the expert on. You need to know things before people start asking you. How do you do that?
I host a podcast. I go to trade shows. I love traveling. I love asking. I'm curious. I think the thing that we miss out on a lot is just insatiable curiosity. I think that one thing that entrepreneurs have is we're just curious about everything. And I'm not walking in saying I know everything. I want to know more about it. So I'm curious about you. I'm curious as to why you do the things that you do, and I want to learn more. I think if you ever lose that curiosity, you stop growing and understanding that I don't really know anything. I don't. I'm culling information from other people. I'm just learning what everybody else is telling me. And that's the fun of doing a podcast, because you have no idea who's going to come on and what they're going to say. And you get some really good stuff. I actually host 3 different podcasts. I host the Brentwood Chamber of Commerce podcast, the Brentwood Up podcast. I host another podcast with my business coach. Her name is Deborah Sunderland. It is called Shut Up and Thrive. And so on that, she's my business coach. She interviews CEOs and business leaders. And we, it's that inner critic inside. It's telling the inner critic to shut up, stop blaming other people, look inward, and you'll start thriving. And really having those conversations. I think that's one way I stay current too, is I listen to other people, and I see why I love podcasts. I love talking to just everybody in the community.
I love it.
Books. I'm a voracious reader. Constantly.
What's your favorite? What's your most recent favorite?
I have some absolute standbys. If you work for me, if you're in leadership in my company, then you have to read the book QBQ. Are you familiar with this book?
I am not.
Sweet. QBQ is the question behind the question. It's by a gentleman named John G. Miller. And it is a book. It's an hour-long read. I think it's like 112 pages, big words, no pictures. It's great. It is about asking yourself different questions throughout the day. Instead of saying, how come they don't do this? How come they don't do that? And your wife, family, anywhere, how come she doesn't do this? What can I do to ensure that? It's inserting yourself into the answer and finding. It's a book about personal accountability. And I think that's something that we have lost all over this country. Everybody wants to blame everybody for everything that's going on versus looking in the mirror and saying, what can I do differently? What can I control? Which is me. I can't control you. So why do I care about what they do? What can I do to fix the things I need to fix? What can I do to ensure in a restaurant? How come they never seat me the good tables? How come they never run my food? How come they never run my drinks? How come they never make my drinks on time? What can I do to ensure that I get seated appropriately? What can I do to ensure that my food gets ran? I can go have a conversation with them. It puts power into you. So QBQ is an absolute must. There's another book that I love that has changed service in all of my restaurants, Unreasonable Hospitality, which is by a man named Will Guidara, Guidara. New York Times bestseller. Had him on the podcast. He was the owner of 11 Madison Park in New York. It's his story of taking this Midland 3-star brasserie to being the #1 restaurant in the world. And you can apply it to any team. You can apply it to anything that you do. Everything is about genuinely caring. If you're clocking in and clocking out, stop doing it. Go find something that brings you passion. My coach asked me, she said, I want you to recognize when you are feeling tired and exhausted. And I want you to recognize when you feel energized and you feel like you're really in your element. And in those moments, I want you to jot down what you're doing. Because if you're doing anything that makes you feel tired and exhausted and that's not what I want to do, stop doing it. Because that's not your genius. That's the other book is the Conscious 12. I can't think of the name of the book now, but it's the Conscious Leadership is what I call it. The 12 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. There's another absolute game changer. I can't even tell you who the authors are because it's by like 6 different people. So I'll go with those 3 to start. And I've read each one of those a couple times. The 12 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, Unreasonable Hospitality, and QBQ. Of course, the old standard 1-minute manager, if you're managing people, is an absolute classic. Ken Blanchard.
Yep.
Basic stuff.
Just out of college. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you say your leadership team, you give them, so you have them read them and then y'all review them and study them together?
I do. I also have a thing on the podcast I do called Brandon's Book Club. And so I open this up there, but my leadership team, yes, I find a book. Let's say it's Patrick Lencioni. We do 5 dysfunctions of a team. I have a team that's not performing. I'll pull 5 dysfunctions out. Everybody has to read 5 chapters a week, and then we do meet in our leadership team meeting, and we talk about each dysfunction. And then we host an offsite where we all get together and we get vulnerable and we talk about this stuff. Now, most time when I do it on the podcast, as I do Brandon's book club, I bring the author in, and I have them talk about it with me. Then I have people call in, and we can all discuss the book with the author because they're willing to come on the show, and that's nice. Another fun thing about doing the podcast is authors will come on your show and tell you the story of their book.
Right. Yeah. I do love it. I like intentional leadership, not
100%.
accidental.
Is that what's your favorite book?
My favorite book has been Traction for several years.
Gina Wickman. We work on the EOS process too.
Yeah.
Love it.
I'm sort of morphing into the elite, building an elite organization. I like that one. I just heard that author, Dan, I can't remember his name, and I just heard him speak at a redemptive real estate conference a couple of months ago, and he just inspired me. So we're building our organization still. Got several key hires that we're trying to make, and so that's front of mind for me. So
I love it.
All right, let's pivot again.
Sure.
Successful entrepreneurs almost always will have most of their net worth tied up in their organizations, and so not asking for numbers, anything, but how do you invest personal cash, like asset classes we're talking about? We're not even asking for specific stocks. If you do stocks, maybe you do crypto and Beanie Babies and stuff like that. So how do you approach managing your own personal investable wealth?
I put a lot of it back into the businesses. Honestly, a lot of it goes. I do have some stocks. I don't purchase a ton. I like to. It's more like legalized gambling for me, kind of. I like to get in there and watch them, and it's just a fun thing to kind of keep my time. I invest in my home. I put as much as I possibly can into paying this guy off. I feel like that's just an investment that comes back to me.
No doubt.
Back in the business, you know what? A random thing that I buy that is worth money. This is not a real thing, but shoes. I'm a sneaker guy. I buy like Air Jordans and things that are really rare, and I hold on to them, and I can sell them at times. It's like a different kind of stuff.
So you really as investments. Okay. Well,
yeah, I buy shoes like that, like baseball cards or Pokemon cards. I buy rare Jordan shoes. I like to look at them and then sell them if need be.
Do you wear them?
I have plenty that I do wear. I have about 15 pairs that I wear, and then I have the others that are just like sitting there that are, not.
Do you have a display case at home that you keep them in, or okay?
They have their own individual boxes in my closet. Yeah, they're like these own.
And what
little...
did your wife think about this?
Well, I will tell you that she says I'm not allowed to buy any more shoes. Not to wear. I can't buy any more to wear. If I say I've got shoes, she's like, not for you, right? I'm like, well, I'm going to sell this pair, so I got to replace it. There's an empty spot in the box. Now, there's little boxes. They have their own little pull downs. Sure. It's fun though. It's almost like a hobby. Anything that I can have fun doing, that I enjoy investing, that doesn't feel like work. And then I love looking at stuff online. I love following trends and just seeing where things are. And, very diversified across the board with a bunch of different things. If I ever need to cash in this stuff, I'll do it. But if I don't, then it's going to continue to build wealth.
Technology really makes some of those collectibles, really true investments, because you can unload them pretty fast. So
eBay is great. My kids, I have 9 and 11-year-old boys. They loved Pokemon cards, right? They were big into Pokemon cards, and I don't know the first thing about Pokemon cards. So I bought a bunch of Pokemon cards on like Amazon. They're all fake. I spent like $30, but they were like, Dad, these are fake. And so I went to the shop and I said, hey, are these real? What's the deal with these? And then the guy explained to me about Pokemon cards. And I was like, well, it's pretty interesting. So I started buying Pokemon cards with the boys so that I could talk to them. We had the best time in the world collecting. Now they're done with Pokemon cards, but I have this huge book full of all these rare Charizards and different cards that I just I'm going to hang on. It's sitting right here in my studio. I'm looking at it and I'm not going to touch it. That's one of the things I'm just going to leave. And then maybe in 10 years, we'll see what it's worth. But I have a bunch of like graded fun cards. It's weird.
Well, Pokemon are kind of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's been around for 40 years. So I don't think Pokemon's going anywhere. So I think
no, and I have some that are north of like $500 a card. It's great, and these are cards you just open in a pack. You open a pack, and you're like, "What is this?" And it's a rare card, and you save it, and you can get them graded now, and they come in these little sleeves that are gem mint number 10, all these little things. It's a really neat world when you get into it, and I learned to speak that language with my children.
I have a 13-year-old who's into that as well, and I'm like you. How do you tell the different fake? It's wonderful when your 9-year-old comes up to you and tells you got had. By buying them off of Amazon.
It's the thing. Well, if you want to buy any, I have some for. If you want, if you got 13 years into that, I got some cool ones there. If you want to make a.
Yeah. No, my wife has told me I can't buy anymore. So.
Yeah, it's the shoe thing. It's no more shoes. No more that.
All right. Last question. Brandon, if you had, if you were mentoring somebody or somebody just wanted to follow in your footsteps, what one piece of advice would you give them?
I go back to my book, QBQ. I would say you're responsible for yourself. Don't blame anybody else. The question behind the question is amazing, but I would ask, this is the piece of the question I would ask them is this: what part do you play in a result you don't want? If you think that, every time you get a result, if you ask that question, you'll put yourself in the right direction.
That's fascinating.
The world's going to world every day. It's not going to stop. World's going to world every day. Nothing's good. Nothing's bad. All we have are results.
Yeah.
Like if I want to weigh 110 pounds and I weigh 140, it's not, well, I want to weigh. No, the result is I weigh 140 or 240 or whatever my weight. The result is what it is. So everything in this world, if you look at it, everything is a result, not only just black and white on a piece of paper, but in life, everything is a result. And if there are results that you don't want, what part do I play in that? And if there is no part you play in it, if it's an election, I didn't vote. Well, that would be something you could have done.
Right.
If it's my wife is met, what did you do? And own it and grow from it. Mistakes are not the end of the world. I love mistakes. Keep making mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough.
That's right.
Keep trying. But also, if there's results that you don't want, if there's anything that you don't want, what part do I play in the result that I don't want? That's what I would tell somebody immediately. And then I would say, get real good at identifying what you want and what you don't want, and it's back to that serenity prayer again. What can you control, and how well can you control the things that you can control? If you can control something and you mess it up and you can learn from it, it's totally worth it.
That is the most unique answer we've ever had to that question so far. That's fascinating. I love that. What is your?
Was that on track? Was that
no?
It's questions.
It's fascinating, and I'm sitting here. So basically, I'm a numbers guy. So what percentage did you play in the results that you didn't want? Are you 90% responsible, or is it closer to 99? Or as some of my kids would say, where nothing's ever their fault, and it's like, that's not true. Do we get impacted by outside things? Yeah, that's part of that stuff we can't control. But
I'll give you an example. I had a general manager from one of my restaurants who stole some money, right? Allegedly. And I had to let him go. And I was upset with this. I didn't do this, but the question was posed to me: what part do you play in the result that you don't want? And I went, well, I didn't do it. I said, it's a nice deflection, but you need to sit alone and think about what part you played in the result that you didn't want. And then I can look back and go, well, he did call me the other day and I didn't answer. He did raise his hand and say that he was going through a really tough time, and I didn't prioritize my time with him. I really could have spent that time with him and identified where his financial struggles were. I could have been a better friend. I could have leaned in more versus it's not my fault. No, there's always something you can learn when you think about what your part is. I'm not taking responsibility for him, but I'm taking responsibility as a leader for the things that I could have done to prevent that. And is there anything I could have done? And if I say no, I play no part in that, then I'm missing some accountability there. I'm missing some area for me to grow because I've just closed it off. And no matter what it is, whatever the result is, you play a part in it. And what part do you play in the result you don't want?
Yeah, I love that. And that's a real biblical worldview in my opinion. We don't live in a vacuum. No man is an island, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, we got to wrap it up there. Brandon, thank you so much for your time. Anybody who's got, owner, manager, whatever, just always appreciate them sharing time with us because I know they don't have much available, but thank you for
not
being
a lie.
So to the audience, thank you for watching this episode of the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity podcast. Brandon, if people would want to reach out to you, how would they do that?
On Instagram, you can reach out to me. I am at Brandon Styll. I think it's Brandon Styll _ Brandon STYLL. You can also follow me at Nashville _Restaurant _Radio. Atlanta Restaurant Radio. I'm all over the place, but find me on Instagram or LinkedIn. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm at Brandon Styll. There's a Nashville Restaurant Radio page. You can send me an email if you like, brandon@newlighthospitality.com. And go follow us on the socials. We're posting whenever we do fun things. I don't post as much as I think they're telling me I should, but I don't have any rules. It's just something I do that's fun and I love it. And
understand.
We just have a good time.
We will make sure all those links get into the show notes as it comes out. Once again, audience, thank you for watching this episode. Thank you, Brandon. And I hope y'all will come back and watch another episode of the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity podcast. I'm Stewart Heath, your host. See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity podcast. If you'd like to be a guest, visit growthgraceprosperity.com /guest. We'd love to hear your story.